This podcast is brought to you by Alldus International, supplying your expert AI and digital transformation staffing needs across the US and Europe. Today, you are listening to our AI in Action series, where leading minds in AI from across the world share their story, success, and advice. AI in Action cuts through the hype and explores the true impact of artificial intelligence in our world today.
Ari Kaplan, Head of Evangelism at Databricks. Thank you very much for coming into us in the podcast today.
Well, Mark, thank you for having me. It's my first time in Dublin in Ireland, so having such an incredible time. Thanks for having me.
We're going to talk about Databricks in a moment, but what I'd love to do is if you could talk them through your journey in the world of sports as an analyst all those years ago, and talk about being a kind of sports fan first, and then the world of analytics and engineering, and how that kind of came to that.
Great. Yeah, well, the most important part is sports span, since when we talk into the whole data engineering and data and analytics, a lot of work, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, as we say. So if you're not a fan or passionate of what you're doing in life, whatever your job is, it's your job is secondary. So I'm very fortunate to have worked in an industry, in a job that I've been very, very passionate from my heart, love the game, love watching. Somehow, when I went to college, played NCAA, which is like a high level of college baseball. So being a player, not a good player, I should say, but I need it. That's important. But a fan first. And then the journey was, I went to Caltech, which is the California Institute of Technology, known for being like a high academic institution, high research, a lot of Nobel Prize winners. And that's where I came up with the idea of being able to better evaluate player talent. So we'll talk a lot about data and AI and machine learning and Gen AI, but being able to write a math formula that best describes what's happening in the real world is important. And baseball, the 1980s wasn't the most sophisticated analytical world out there for anything, but certainly not in sports. So be able to better show how you perform, how a player performs using math than what was done before made a lot of sense. And a lot of people agree that common stats that you read in the newspaper were good, but they were not perfect. So everyone was complaining, but I came up with different formulas that were simple. So if you see the letter X, like expected goals, expected wins, that was like the paradigm, one of the paradigms I came up with back in the 80s. Easy to explain. People may not know how do you do the math to get the expected goal. But what was important is they would just trust it, and it was a better way to evaluate players. Long story short, got the attention of media, and then the general manager of the Los Angeles Dodgers, a gentleman named Fred Clare, saw me in the newspaper and called me up, invited me in, and I went from being that passionate fan as a teenager to like meeting like these incredibly epic players in the dugout, like a couple of hours later that same day is like an incredible experience. And then I had to parlay that into actually adding value. So got a foot in the door, and then you had to work, become innovative, get through cultural challenges or people didn't understand or didn't believe or felt threatened, kind of like a little bit of what you see today. I was looking through your great book briefly, but jobs aren't going to be affected, I think, positively, but our baseball scouts' jobs going to be affected. So there's some resistance, which came to the movie Moneyball. We could talk about that, but that made the interest in sports analytics incredible. But I've always been able to like progress my career in sports. So started out as an analyst, and then became a professional scout, which is a human talent evaluator, helped out with different ownership groups on the business side, working with players as like personal analytical coaches, working with managers to help them strategize in games, and just kept it going from there.
So there's so much in that, but if you think about what the work that you did as that catalyst for all those teams now in Major League Baseball, having anywhere between 30 to 50 data scientists as a given that they're working across NFL, we've got soccer, all the different types of cities. But it wasn't always that way, right?
No, when I started in the late 80s, there were only 5 people in sports that were identified to work in what you might call it, like even a data analyst or even a data engineer back then. So it went from 5 to now across all sports, including the teams and the vendors, tens of thousands of people. There's sports analytics degrees in college across the world now. So yeah, it's very, very different, but a lot of that is the answer is it works. If it didn't work, teams and now companies across every industry wouldn't be investing and placing value, but it worked.
Yeah. And when you think about the Moneyball, that like very few people who've watched that movie have ever said to me is not good. Like it is, I think on Rotten Tomatoes, like 97, 98%, like people love that movie. It is that kind of cult as well. It must have been a very, very surreal experience with your Brad Pitt, Jonah Hill, all these different types of people. And you were the catalyst for so much of that. What's there? Like, what was that like back in the day?
Well, it's still surreal. Back in the day, it was like over 20 years ago, like 22 years ago, like with the book, the movie, in 2011, 12, when they were working on it and coming out. And still, it's very surreal. Like, I'm on airplanes and they're watching the movie, a couple seats next to me. People are still inspired. Companies, have me, hire me to speak at like their conferences just to talk about Moneyball. There's initiatives at companies that still say the Moneyball of whatever, of insurance, the Moneyball of oil drilling. So they all are still inspired by it.
Yeah.
And it's great since it's just the numbers, but then it's the cultural change, old school to data driven.
Yeah, it's because it's kind of crazy because everyone knows how to, if you need to get an Uber, I Google it, or yeah, Moneyball. Like it's such a term now. When you think about the other hats that you've wore, because I was trying to figure out how I would explain who you are or what you do, but it's so multifaceted. You've been involved in Oracle User Group, Data Robots. You're obviously now with Databricks. We're going to talk a little bit later about some of the work that you do with prisoners. Do you just love a broad range of topics to go at? Do you kind of just don't want to be kind of boxed in?
Yeah, it's a combination of like being what people they say a highly functioning Forrest Gump. So like being at the right place at the right time in history. But then the other is I like being like there's like this Goldilocks zone where I like being on the forefront of pushing the boundaries of technology and humanity, but not too far. Like I want it so once you talk about it, you could go back and like put your hand on the keyboard and actually do something. So I know like when I know you're into like quantum, I'm very fascinated with it, but that's not like in my day to day. So you can't quite yet go and do something with it, but you're in the theoretical to practical stage. But that being said, like every 3 or 4 years, there's like a major leap, a quantum leap, no pun intended, of technology. Of course, we're in the generative AI. So that's why my career kind of keeps moving. If once it's the point where thousands of people, tens of thousands of people are doing something and it's kind of easy to do, I get my excitement going on to the next level.
And what does a head of evangelism do for Databricks? And unless people have been living in Iraq, would you mind just telling people a little bit about it? Because people could probably be shocked to know as the third biggest private IT company or technology company out there, where they may not have known that scale, that size. We're going to talk about some of the use cases, but could you tell us a little bit what your job entails and a little bit more about Databricks?
Yeah, well, high-level Databricks is leading like end-to-end data and AI platforms. So companies that want to have good quality data at like an enormous scale. They're talking trillions of records, real time, super fast, based on open source technology. That's Databricks, and our founders are huge open source. Like they created, ML Flow and Delta and Spark. That's Databricks was known as the Spark company. Now it's so much more. But we'll kind of get into that history lesson. But the role of an evangelist, it's a kind of a funny name, but it's getting more popular. It's basically like a combination of like an ambassador or a cheerleader for everything, not just Databricks, 'cause I'm not a salesperson, but like the whole industry, what's happening in data and AI. And if the audience, if I'm talking to a customer, yes, I'll talk about how Databricks fits in and what companies are doing, but it's really about like hoping to inspire people of what they could and should safely and ethically be doing with data and AI. So it's everything from speaking at different events around the world. We just had our summit, and I was the director and co-host of our live stream, which was an incredible experience. Over 78,000 people were registered, and that was before they did 2 replays in Europe and Asia Pacific. So there's probably more, but an enormous audience. So that's speaking at events, traveling to different customers. That's one reason I'm here in Ireland, my first time. JP Morgan Chase, one of our biggest customers. Then I go to Helsinki, then I go to London, take a break, then I go to Australia. So I travel all over the world. And then sometimes, like you do, like writing. So whether it's social media, a lot of people just like 60-second videos on what things are, to co-authoring books. Like if you've heard of the Dummy series, did data intelligence for dummies, Lakehouse platform for dummies. So that's kind of what an evangelist does.
So you've kind of got this sandbox where you're kind of playing and having so much energy with things that you really kind of love. Tell us a little bit about some of the kind of use cases that Databricks are internally eating their own dog food on.
Yeah.
And on the flip side, tell us about some of the customer use cases that you're seeing that you find very inspiring.
Yeah. So, dog food is the terminology. Hopefully most people are familiar with it. But it's like, how does a company use their own technology? And, many benefits. One is if your technology is any good, that it should help you, which it does vastly. But then the other is if it's not perfect, you see ways to push the edge, and it's a great way regardless. So if you're a startup company, try to make these MVPs, making products based on like improvement based on what you see. So that's a great internal way. Any startup out there, use your own technology to see your own pain points and where you can grow. So like some use cases, I sit in evangelism, which is in marketing. So we have, we call it Marge. It's like our marketing genie. Genie is like a chatbot. So marketing, love the department, but it's largely non-technical people, and that's fine. People that don't know Python or SQL or, pick your language of choice. But we have Salesforce data, Marketo data, email messages, Slack messages. And you just want our chief marketing officer to say, we did, I don't know, 50, 100 different events this year. Which one got the most pipeline business? And it's that simple. You ask a question and it hopefully gives an answer based on your own data, with your own governance. So that's one example. We have our analyst relation, and not a data analyst, but an analyst firm, which are these companies, Gartner, Forrester, IDC, firms that analyze what is the business of Microsoft, Oracle, Databricks. And we have a great team, but there are too many analysts and too many like analyst companies and too few of us. So we also wrote this Gen AI based chatbot so people can answer questions. Is Databricks ISO compliant? Yes or no? What was Databricks revenue? And where we're allowed, and it knows what's allowed to be said and what's not. It knows which analysts are under NDA and which aren't. So it could give, answers, or it could say, I'm not authorized to say that, which is super important. You don't want a chatbot to answer everything. Otherwise, we would have an HR chatbot and say, how much does Mark make? What's his salary?
Yeah, or tell me about Mark's disciplinary problems. Yeah, tell me about why he's got 21 days holidays and everyone else has got 18. Like all these different pertinent questions that you just don't want access to. That unless you tweak it, it's going to just give you back the response. It doesn't take up the kind of subtleties or sensitivities. It was funny. I saw recently like a company was showcasing they had like 100,000 tickets and they were able to pinpoint the reasons such as faulty laptops, accessible security codes, and there was wonderful, lovely graph visualizations, and then it turned to why did this person get this job?
Yeah.
What was their hiring criteria for that? Talk me through that disciplinary procedure. Why was that so it can get very very specific with questions you don't want to answer, or you want to be very cautious with what you want to get out there. Have you been surprised with how companies have looked using Databricks and they've warmed to them, and there's this general vibe that Databricks is seen as like a real leader in this, and the momentum seems to be with you, particularly with kind of products like Lake House and things like that.
The warmth and like the community is unbelievable. It's like a sports team. It's like people are like very passionate fans. It's launched a lot of careers and made a lot of individual people very successful in their careers or made their jobs much easier in the sense that like you don't want to bang your head against the table. I've been there. You might have been there, like trying to set up a Hadoop cluster and 3 weeks, and then finally you found a missing semicolon. So like Databricks makes things easy. It makes things super scalable. And then, I like to say, I joined Oracle when there were about 5,000 employees. I joined Databricks when there were about 5,000 employees. And so I've seen like twice in my career this incredible hyper growth. And it's very similar in that growth, but it's different in that when I was with Oracle, you still needed to do the Moneyball, convince people you need a relational database. And with Databricks and with data and AI, like from the board level of like every major company, they're kind of screaming, we need better insights. We need AI. If you don't know how to do it, we don't know even the use cases yet, which is a little backwards, but it's different with Databricks since there's pull from the market. And I don't know, just like one example, I was in India last year, tried to get my month straight, and we're growing super fast there. So much so that like we have way more customers and partners than we even have employees to even call people back. So I think the other unique thing is we are a huge partner first company. When I was with Oracle, it wasn't, it was not they had a huge partner ecosystem, but here we need partners to help us scale. Since there's so much enthusiasm out there for data and AI, and Databricks is like at the epicenter of it. It's pretty wild. This summit in person, 22,000 people in person. It's interesting economic time, but that would like blew by your numbers, and then over 78,000. So total over 100,000 people is in this day and age incredible.
Yeah, and I promise I won't go into IPOs because we won't go into all that, but I'm sure it's only a matter of time before that happens because I think everybody wants to get access to Databricks.
Yeah, I honestly don't know. I am in touch with the the executive team, but yeah, I don't know if they know, but
Yeah,
I'm sure
sure it's on the way.
what they say is whatever they're looking like 10+ year time horizon. So whatever like maximizes the shareholder value. And in the way in between, we raised a significant round, 10 billion plus, line of credit. So, in a very good shape,
Yeah,
growing 60% revenue year over year ish, and that
yeah.
you give or take.
And if we kind of pivot a little bit, tell me a little bit about your other passion, pit prisoners, and some of the work that you do around that.
Yeah, I'm on the side, the president of the investigation of the fate of Raoul Wallenberg, who was a Swedish diplomat during the Holocaust, saved tens of thousands of Hungarian Jewish people. And then through great means, there's a website, raoulsfates.org, that details all of it. But it's been one of the biggest human rights mysteries of the last like 100 years. And usually him and Amelia Earhart. But he did so much good. And then right as the war ended, the Soviet Union at the time arrested him and his driver, and he disappeared into the gulag. So it's been a big mystery. And so I've been able to get like top clearance into Soviet archival records, make a database of it. You have every prison record in like the Gul in parts of the Gulag where there are eyewitnesses, eyewitness accounts, transportation, studies, interrogations, what questions are asked, answers given, and then use data science to find things like who could be credible eyewitnesses, what cells and locations could he be in, what might happen. Um, so that's been like my main side thing for all these years, and along the way also working to get people who were in prison around the world improperly, like prisoners of conscience is one of the terms, or just having like they were arrested falsely, accused of crimes that they didn't commit, and try to get them out, which is one of the most honorable things. And I began this saying, I encourage every listener, whatever it is, to do something above and beyond their day job, um, whether it's charity work, whatever helps you help civilization. I want to encourage inspired people to do that. For me, that's one of my like passions outside of work is to help identify and free missing people or wrongfully imprisoned people.
Yeah, it's incredible because you can only imagine what it's like to be on the other side of the fence when you haven't done a crime and you're on your 10, 20 years of your life spent in a jail, like it's or prison. It's just incredible. And then try to piece together and be an advocate group and show through the data how this person did not do that or how they need a different conversation about it. It's truly glad to have that. So the passions that you had from the sports and then kind of going above your day job has enabled you to have so much kind of impact. Does that drive your energy towards, do you think, a really positive future world of AI? Do you think we are on a cusp of healthcare being solved in 5 to 6 years for some of the cancers that we live and die by every day? Do you think it's going to be a transformative technology that we underestimate, or you also kind of a bit like Jeffrey Hinton, where
Yeah.
it's taken over, sentient, we're in trouble? Where do you kind of land with your own thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, um, when I say long term, I don't even know what that is anymore. Yeah, it's true. Let's 20 years, 10 years now. It's not true. Five, there it's a five, I'd say. Yeah. Yeah, I am. Well, I haven't gone to Caltech. I've seen so many transformative technologies. They own and operate, for example, Jet Propulsion Lab. So LIGO, the gravitational wave detector, those are things I never imagined we would be able to be able to see gravity waves and understand some of the fundamental questions of physics. Incredible. So I think overall humanity is going to be much, much better. Healthcare. I am a futurist, so I used to work with and friends still with Dr. Lee Hood, who did the first DNA sequence, and we had lengthy conversations. He thinks, and since he thinks I'd be apt to agree, that humans with AI and genetics, could live 300, 400, 500 years, which is good and bad. It kicks the can on other problems like resources, but the ability to have better health, better communication. I'm a video game fan. I love VR. I can't wait to play like AI-driven VR where it takes my imagination where I want to. But like any technology, Caltech, the Manhattan Project, Caltech was very much involved. The thing I worry about is things are going to be changing so quickly that, the Industrial Revolution, so many revolutions, um, Stone Age and so on, that takes a lot of time. The time frame is going to be so quick that, it's like taking a snowball and shaking up all of
Yeah, because it's funny. I see people say, there's some ways this, and I know McKinsey came with an interesting research that said, in some ways, so many things have changed, but in other ways, very little bit is kind of changed. But I see so much dramatical change in how people are working using the technology, particularly kind of people who are literate and using it for their day-to-day, or summarization, writing emails, creating brochures, images, whatever it might be, or doing deep research. And then people who are not using that tech, and how people are just being left behind. And they're the people that are getting promoted. I know those are people, hiring managers want to hire more and more. And then you've got people coming on and saying, okay, this is overhyped, that we don't see the value use cases. But even companies like JP Morgan being very, very on the record as seeing the value that they're seeing. How do you kind of say to those people, guys, yes, there's an element of hype around this, but if you're not on this journey, you're going to be left behind. There's no way around that.
Yeah, well, just, excellent point. So just a few years ago, you were probably, and some of our listeners might identify with this, is you go to a conference or you go to talk to other people, and you'd feel awkward saying predictive analytics or AI. You should really try it. And everyone's just focused on data, and you feel awkward, like, walking robots. What is this? I don't need a robot in my job. And you feel awkward about it. And now 2 years later, it's flipped. Everyone's like, I need Gen AI. I don't know what for. And you have to say, you still need govern good data. So it's almost flipped. A lot of people, I think, now are realizing for job security, but also job productivity, being able to use things like Copilot if you're a programmer, and use them effectively, it only raises you to the next level of your job. But then they realize, Gen AI for business isn't exactly perfect yet. So to be the best coder, you need to have a Copilot, maybe to debug if you're stuck somewhere. Every coder, myself included, would go to Google or GitHub and kind of copy snippets of code that other people use. And Gen AI theoretically is similar, where it's using it, but you're still guiding what the end result is. So you still need that hyper experience, and human element to put the pieces together to make it work properly. But to have these co-pilots, it just accelerates you. What you used to be able to do, in X, like a week, maybe you could do it in a day, in a couple hours, depending on what you're looking to do.
Yeah, if you're in software engineering, you're using it every day. I'd be very surprised if there isn't people that are actually using it every day, or even just in web design. And then people now got tools like Lovable or Aptus, where they can just create these apps in a moment and then use them as a reference point to say, make it more like this that I've created, empowering people as well. Ari, we could go on for days. Thank you very much for joining us on the podcast today.
Well, thank you. Glad to be here, bud. Being done with you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Alldus podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and any Android podcast of choice. You can also head over to our website, www.alldus.com, to listen to more podcasts, view our open roles, and stay up to date with industry news. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for more great episodes coming very soon.